Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you once again to look back over all the action in the British Basketball League. Let's go all the way back to Tuesday night and start with the FIBA Europe Cup as London Lions were beaten by Avtodor Saratov, 77 points to 104. I was watching the first quarter of this game on my phone as I was trying to make my way home. And the thing that came to mind, Dave, is that quote that you've said on here a couple of times is if you give pro players open 3-point shots, they're going to shoot at 78% from the 3-point line. As it happened, I think there was 75% from the three-point line in the first quarter. Saratov, a lot of very, very nice looks from their perspective.
Yeah, obviously I'm always slightly concerned that this show might get slightly monotonous because obviously we're talking about the same teams playing the same type of basketball week in, week out. And so instead of consulting the thesaurus, I went to my favorite cookbook for this game.
Okay.
Obviously you probably guessed I'm more Gordon Ramsay than Adelia Smith. And the words that came out, diced.
Oh, you just paused there. We missed the words. What
you
was
missed
the words? Yeah.
Sorry. Diced.
Diced. Yeah.
Filleted.
Yeah.
Masticated. And regurgitated.
Yeah.
Which I think means chewed up and spat out.
Yeah.
And in reality, that's what happened to London. They came across a Saratov team that probably weren't overly pleased that they had nearly lost to them in Moscow. Probably maybe.
Or Saratov.
Yeah, in Saratov, in Moscow. Well, it's Russia. It's a big, it's a small country. Come on, But in Saratov, beg your pardon. I'm trying to add a little bit of, I could say Saratov and Saratov and Saratov. It gets boring. It's my fault. Anyway, they gave them basically a lesson, both defensively and offensively. Now, I don't think London helped themselves. No. I'm perplexed that you take Dirk Williams out the starting lineup. That to me is difficult to justify. There's a lot. I understand why you take other guys out the starting lineup, but watching the European games this year, Dirk has been the one who's gone off early, and Dirk is also one of those guys who needs to get into a rhythm. And if it's a different mentality coming off the bench and being a bench scorer. And they did that in the European game last week as well. And they scored about 5 points in the first 6 minutes. And the same thing happened again in this game. So that surprised me. But the rest of the way, they just obliterated them.
Yeah.
And I'm not too critical about London because Saratov are clearly very, very good.
Yeah.
But they came out utterly focused on that game, and it was never close.
Yeah. They were 4 of 6 from 3 in the second quarter, so they ended up 10 for 14 from behind the arc in the first half. And really, that's the ball game. There's no point in even talking about the second half. Teague with 28 points, Reese with 13 points and 9 assists, although 8 turnovers, and Dirk was the third top scorer with 11. Derek Funderbunk had 21 points off 8 of 10 shooting. Yevgeny Kalashnikov had 18 points off 7 of 8 shooting, 4 of 5 from the 3-point line. They had 5 guys at 13 plus. They shot 40 for 63 from the floor and 14 of 25, 56% from 3.
What perplexed me a little bit about the fourth quarter was London's lineups, because the game was dead. They can't qualify, and yet and they're in the middle of a very busy schedule, and yet they Spencer didn't get off the bench. Ward Hibbert didn't get off the bench, and we'll come to this a little bit later. And Neighbour played very little as well. And it just seemed to me that I can understand burning Teague out, and to a certain degree Majauskis, because they're not playing on Friday and Sunday, but burning Reese out, playing the amount of minutes he did, really surprised me, particularly when you're down by 30 in the fourth quarter. But then, you've got celebrities in the building, I suppose.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah. Even ones who seemingly know nothing about basketball, despite living in Madrid for a year.
I'd like to say he lived in Newcastle too, but he really didn't. He just got a helicopter in.
No, yeah.
But no, so no, I thought that was a little bit. The thinking was a little bit muddled there. Also, just looking at it again and looking at London as a whole, I was actually thinking, watching the game, just as the higher the level goes, the more the differential in player was obviously exacerbated. And I was just looking at thinking about Majauskas, because he's a bit of a throwback player, and he's European, but being Europe, there's no restrictions on Europeans, so he's not playing BBL, so they could easily have signed an American. He kind of undersized. He's kind of a 6'6'4".
Yeah.
And you're wondering why they didn't at some point go out and pick up another 6'9" American, to fill that gap behind Kelly, which they've clearly had all season. And Majauskas has done fine in the games that he's played, but he's kind of 6'6", doesn't really shoot the three much, if at all. And he's a European, as opposed when they could have signed another American. It kind of struck us for the first time just watching him that, was that the smartest personnel decision if you're really looking to go, higher and further in the competition?
Yeah. It's a good question. We'll see how they deal with it next year. Let's go on to the BBL action in Friday night, starting in Sheffield, where it was Sheffield Sharks 102, Newcastle Eagles 81, a 250th league win for Atiba Lyons. He's the sixth coach, to get to 250. He was a player indeed.
He was a player coach.
And I think everybody else played at some point, all of the coaches who were above him, because I think
did they play as a player coach? PJ didn't.
No, not at BBL level. No, he did actually. There was a couple of games where he suited up but didn't come on. Same with Cadle. There was a couple of games where he suited up because they were massively short of players. Rob never played as a player coach, and
thought about it for one practice, didn't he?
No, he didn't think about it.
You think about it for one practice?
He said no, and my understanding was the press release went out and said he might do it, but anyway, back to modern day. No Duke Shelton for Newcastle. We later learned that he's ruled out for the season, and we've today learned that Justin Gordon is back for the Eagles, but we won't go on to that. We'll go on to
I was hoping they would actually hold that information back to the next week, so you wouldn't ask us to talk about it, because there's enough to talk about anyway. But we knew Shelton was. I think Shelton's broke his foot, or broke a bone in his foot. So I think his as I understand it, his recuperation time was kind of 6, 8, 10 weeks, which is basically the season.
So basically, the Eagles essentially just had Carl Williams coming off the bench. There was a couple of minutes here or there elsewhere, but primarily just him. And Antoine Johnson made his debut for the Sharks in for Anderson. Eagles first 6 points, Sharks next 10 points, and then not a great deal of difference. Sheffield had a bit of an edge, but not really much in that first half.
No, it was a bit back and forward, as you say, and it was kind of the first team to really get some stops might impact this game positively, and neither team really did. It was Newcastle's Achilles heel has been their interior defense, not necessarily the big guys, but certainly the fact that teams are able to score on them in the paint, whether it's the guards penetrating, whether it's lack of help at the right time, or whether it's just inability to get your body in the way. And I think they gave up 30 points in the paint in the first half. And basically, as a rule of thumb, 18 to 20 is probably what you would expect in a normal basketball game, because you're going to give up some offensive rebounds, you're going to give up some layups, fast break stuff. To give up 30 in the paint is in a half. It is not good, particularly I think it's 30 out of 46. Sheffield's defense wasn't that much better. Sheffield changed a little bit because obviously Anderson's gone, so they now basically put the team around Glasgow entirely. So he's gone from coming off the bench to sharing minutes to being their guy, and I'm pretty sure that's based around his passport more than anything else, because it allows them to bring in Johnson, as you say, who's another scoring American. So their lineup now is Johnson and Wallace, who are kind of two scorers basically around Glasgow. Nichols at the 4 with Mazzulo playing quite well behind him if necessary, and then the big guys are Delpesh, Tuck, Coke, etc. And obviously Rutino fitting in wherever they need him, because Rutino's shown he can play positions 2 through 4, and that kind of depth kind of helps them. But it does give you people you can shut down. But Newcastle didn't manage to shut any of them down. You know, both Wallace and the new guy from Bristol, Antoine
Johnson.
Sorry, Johnson. They scored the ball, you know, really comfortably throughout, and Eagles, you know, they got the 20 and whatever it was from Fletcher. They got a good game from Defoe, but they didn't really get much else, I'm afraid. And by the end of the third quarter, you know, the lack of impact off the bench and the lack of legs, you know, really helped Sheffield take the game away they were in rhythm, took the game away down the stretch.
Well, it was 56-53 with 3.5 minutes to go in the third, and then Kipper Nichols, then Johnson a 3. Sheffield had the last 5 points of the quarter, so went into the fourth up 11, and then, as you say, it sort of melted away from the Eagles' perspective. They sort of ran out of gas. And
there was one moment in the game which kind of you always look at because it's a bit giggly, but also it kind of raised my eyebrows again a little bit. In transition, Wallace managed to pin Fletcher in the place where you don't want to be pinned.
Yeah, indeed.
And it was nowhere near the basketball. And I saw a transition unsportsmanlike called. I don't think he tried to hit him there. Of course he didn't.
No.
But I saw a transition unsportsmanlike called in the cup final.
Yeah.
By the same ref who was at that game.
Yeah.
The Sheffield game. And I can only assume that he was told after the cup final that he shouldn't have called the one in the cup final, which, to be fair, I didn't think he should have called on Will Saunders, if you remember, because that was as clear a transition, unsportsmanlike as you'd ever see. It was, you know, Fletcher passed the guy, and the ball is nowhere, and Wallace is nowhere near the ball, and it makes contact with something which would get you disqualified under the Queensberry rules. Again, that's slightly, you know, that was it was kind of because obviously I like Ramon, and I know Ramon, and I felt a bit for Newcastle because they're my team. But even so, it was the inconsistency of that which really disappointed me. They need to sort out their own sports-like fouls in transition, because I'm not even sure anybody knows what the rule is, the way they're reffing it at the moment. I know you know what the rule is.
I know what the rule is. I can give you all 5 reasons. I won't bore people.
But you know, that to me, there's a degree of inconsistency there between, and it's different when you got different refs. I understand there are different interpretations. When you got the same refs, that's not good.
No.
You know, so there we go. But beyond that, no, Sheffield trending upwards, I think. But you know, Newcastle's defense has been such that, you know, if you're going to drop 100 on anybody, it's probably going to be Newcastle when they're undermanned at the moment. So I wouldn't say it's a kind of a line in the sand for Sheffield whereby, you know, oh, that they're great now, they're perfect now. Still think they need shots to fall, you know, and we've seen in the Bristol game you guys did a couple of weeks ago where they couldn't get shots to fall towards the end, that they struggled for offense. Newcastle, I mean, Gordon can't come fast enough, because, you know, if anything, the degree of intensity he showed last year, you know, he's potentially Defensive Player of the Year last year. I know we don't have that vote, but he was certainly in the top 3, and they need that more than anything else at the moment. And how he fits in, he's not naturally a centre. He's probably not naturally a replacement for.
It's not a natural replacement, but if he's available,
well, that's the point, isn't it? If you've got somebody who knows the system, who's been there, who understands, and it's February, so you haven't got time to bring in. You haven't got time to drag a guy in for 6 weeks to find out that he's going to get hurt and then can't do it. This is part of the problem Glasgow have had in replacing him all the way through the season. So so it's a good pickup for them. But you know, the reality is, you know, Sheffield and Newcastle are now both playing for the playoffs. And they're probably both playing to avoid at the very. Well, say that, but they have to get in the playoffs first. If you're Newcastle, you have to get in the playoffs because you're 4 and 8. But 5 and 8, sorry. But you're 4 and 8, I can't remember. But you're playing to avoid the 7th and 8th because you don't want Leicester or London. You know, anybody else, you know, 3 to 6 is going to be, you know, it's going to be game on. But neither of those teams, I think, is going to be looking particularly comfortable against Leicester or London. And I do assume London will finish second. So that's a bit of a assumption I appreciate earlier than when they've only played 8 games. But anything less than that for London would be a catastrophe.
Suboptimal. Delpesh 23, Wallace 27 and 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. Johnson with 18 points, 7 of 10 shooting on his debut for the Sharks. Person 21, Fletcher 21 and 7, Defoe 17. Sheffield had lost their last 4 home games. I saw something saying going first win since December, which is a bit harsh because
Person not have 12, or did he finish off with 21? Can't remember.
Oh, I've got it down here.
Well,
so
anyway, I remember looking at Person's line and thinking he was doing half a mock fit because he was like 15, 12 points, no rebounds, no assists, nothing else. When you got 6 guys, it's not really enough.
I've got 21 here.
You might be right. I probably didn't watch it after the end of the middle of the 4th quarter, so probably missed it.
Let's move on to the trophy. Derby Trailblazers 70, Bristol Flyers 90. Evans back for Bristol. There really wasn't very much in this game at all. The Flyers led by 6 when they scored the first 6 points. The Blazers got out to 8 early in the second quarter, but for most of this game, this was 1 or 2 baskets.
Yeah, I think it got to about 6 points towards the middle of the 4th, and then eventually Bristol got away from it. Yeah, first thing, Derby, nice cameras, horrible floor.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
You've been there, I've been there. We played there. Can't remember which team it was, but probably about 2 or 3 years before I stopped, we got drawn there in the trophy. And the hardest thing was actually getting in the building because we got there at 5:45 and the building didn't open.
The janitor hasn't opened yet.
The janitor hasn't opened yet, and that was literally the conversation that we were having. We weren't allowed in the building. When we got there, everyone was hospitable and all that, but you need a lawyer.
It sounded good as well. The crowd looked full and it sounded good.
But when you need a lawyer to get you in the venue for a game, it's never the greatest. And so you sit on the bus or you go stand in the cold, whatever. Anyway, but that floor is just we took the mickey out of the blue coat at Sheffield for so many years, and eventually they changed it. But I know there's nothing they can do. Well, Derby are a solid team. They're under the auspices of the rules that they have to operate under in the NBL in relation to their imports, etc. They're well coached. They run stuff. Just the higher level you get in the higher echelons you get in the BBL, the higher the talent level is on the opposition in relation to either guards. And Bristol's guards made plays in this game towards the end. They had
a bit more off the bench as well, didn't they? So they looked. It's interesting. We'll just jump forward to this bit because Ryan Bruggeman was scoring really well, kept Derby going in the second half, and with 7.5 minutes to go in the game, it's 66-65 after Bruggeman had hit a 3. And I can't remember the exact point it was, but it was somewhere around there where Liam on the commentary said that 1 or 2 of the Derby players looked a little bit gassed at that point, and then it just played out like that. They just
well, there's a lot of adrenaline obviously in a game like that for Derby, because they've had a great win at Surrey, and again, these are the games whereby if you're a player in the shop window, how do I do against the next level of competition? It's different to all the other teams that they play, but Bristol are good. Bristol aren't the team who are going to fold. And a couple of years ago, when we saw them at Solent, a couple of years ago in the cup semi-final, the trophy semi-final, where they did fold, and they got beat by 30 odd. And they've changed. They're better than that now. They've got a little bit more resilience. Evans is good. He's a shot maker and seems to like the moment, if I can put it that way. I'm not necessarily sure his coach likes the fact that he likes the moment, but he does, and Jacob is an all-round, is your prototypical all-round BBL guy who is going to help you in every single way, and when you throw in their physicality and the fact that they don't appear to have much in the way of egos there because they're playing defense, that's the type of team that's going to grind you down, and I think it did with Derby. Smith wasn't able to go off the way that he did in the first game. You just say your guard Bruggeman, who didn't play down in Surrey, he's the other American guard, I think. So he made some. So it was his big game because he hadn't played in Surrey to show them what he was made of. So he turned up and showed them what he was made of. But in relation to everybody else, what they came up against was a team that was playing transition defense. What they came up was a team that was going to grind them down, and a team that has some belief in itself at this point in time in Bristol. And they made plays at the end.
So, I mean, pick your run. It was either 14-0, 22-2, or 25-4. But either
And
way,
it's always with the lower teams, with the big NBL teams, it's always a question of can they keep scoring? You know, when they get tired, can they keep scoring? Do they have the talent to get a basket out of somewhere to break those runs? And even if you remember in the Surrey game, Derby had 60 in the first half and 30 in the second half.
yeah.
You know, things get harder down the stretch, and that's where your talent kind of takes over, and your energy takes over, and your depth takes over. So yeah, but again, it's a banana skin avoided for Bristol.
Bruggeman with 26, Smith with 13, although four of 17 shooting. To your point,
different size as well,
Yeah.
Different size in Bristol. They got length as well as size, so it does change your looks at the basket if you mark them Smith.
Evans 28 and 7. Jacob 5 of 9 from 3-point range for 21 points.
He is a sneaky good 3-point shooter, and it doesn't look like they should go in because they go up a mile. It's like you're shooting moon balls. But you think of a guy who's got the long arms and the limbs and the athleticism, and you think, oh well, okay, we'll give you the 3 ball, but he shot 38% in college, and he's shooting the ball really well this year as well. He's really probably the most consistent positive impact they have on that team.
So let's go to the Sky Sports game. London Lions 67, Leicester Riders 80. No Justin Robinson, no Andre Lockhart for the Lions. So thin at the point guard position. Obviously, they're still without Jordan Williams.
Yeah, they only have 4
as well. Yeah, exactly. They were down to their last 2 point guards. So, I mean, early on in the game, London offensive rebounding, making some threes. The other end of the floor, Nelson Henry back again, once again in the starting lineup, scoring inside. Whelan picking up where he left off from that previous visit to the copper box, and it was a close first half, really.
I mean, the first thing that struck me was that Tawia started, which was eyebrow raising because he basically hadn't played on Tuesday night. He played a couple of minutes in the European game, and he hasn't really played much in the.
I think that was his second start in a league game this season, and I think it was Cugini's either his third or his fourth.
I can understand Cugini's starting because you want to spread the court and you want to find the guy, but starting Tawia over Kelly, because Cugini's been playing minutes, he's been in the rhythm, he's been playing games. Tawia's not been playing.
No. I wondered whether it was obviously when they played Leicester last time, Kelly picked up 2 fouls in the first 2 minutes, and whether that had something to do with it.
Kelly's your starting centre.
Yeah.
If you're starting centre, if he's, and the other thing was because Leicester was starting Nelson Henry, that meant that Kelly's matchup was Walker, and that's the least favourable matchup for Kelly imaginable. Because Walker. You say Walker was 8 of 9 last time they played them. Walker has a big body. Walker can move Kelly out of the way. Walker doesn't roll at the basket. He's not someone you can talk about. It's just, it made little sense to me. I just thought it was maybe a little bit of overthinking going on. I don't know, but you struggle. The view, you always look to try and find the reason. If you see a reason that something happens, is he hurt? Is it might be foul trouble? You might be right. Is it this? Is it that? Is the other guy ready? Is it a better matchup? All these stuff, and none of them figured for us. None of them worked for us at all. And also, you have to be careful about the psyche of what it does to the player who's been playing all the minutes, and suddenly he's told, "Oh, you're on the bench for the big game." Because not all these guys aren't robots. They'll be like, "What did I do wrong?" And no matter how much a coach explains the logic to a player, the player's first thought is, "Yeah, but what did I do wrong?" Now some players may accept it better than others. Some players may react better than others. And that's a matter ultimately for a coach to determine and a coach to decide upon. But to be fair, James, new coach, he doesn't really know these guys yet. So I just didn't get that move. And that said, London were, as you say, they were ready to play in the first half. They should have been, because this is a trap. Vince said it on the commentary. This was a trap game. The first game after you win the cup is a trap game. It's a nightmare because it's generally the Friday. We always used to be away at Worcester. Every Friday. Every Friday after we win the Southern Cup, they sent us to Worcester. And PJ is sitting there ready, thinking, "Yeah, here we go. Come on, let's get these guys who've been out partying." Because the cup's on a Sunday, and you win the cup, well, Monday's gone. Tuesday is probably gone. You can say, let's be professional, guys, but let's be honest, if you won the cup on Sunday night and you're getting home at 11 o'clock, then you basically got a 3-day week. On Wednesdays, everybody feeling good and slapping each other on the back.
Yeah.
You know, now, again, you say, well, that doesn't happen because, you know, Rob and Pablo, they're professionals. They're not going to let that happen. Look, it happens.
Yeah.
And if they can't, and the coaches can't, even though the coaches know what's happening, they can't do anything about it because they can't be the killjoys. You can't kill the mood. You have to let the mood hang out. So in a perfect world, you know, you're playing on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, and you're playing Leeds or Durham or someone like that at home. You put the cup around and you've won by 30 and everybody's happy. And the schedule sent them to London. And this is where the Tuesday night thing really kind of pickled my brains because, you know, Tawiah played 2.5 minutes on Tuesday night and yet he's starting on Friday against Leicester in your biggest game of the season. Spencer didn't play, not even in the dead minutes of the fourth quarter. He's playing, you know, meaningful minutes. Ward Hibbert didn't play on Tuesday night, yet he's on the court against Leicester. And I'm thinking, what a chance you had. I mean, I can't believe they were all unhealthy on Tuesday and ready to play on Friday. I'm thinking, what a chance you had to put those guys out there in the fourth quarter against Saratov and get some rhythm, if you're thinking the plan. So anyway, sorry, getting back to all of that. It's a bit of a shootout in the first half. At the tempo, as you guys called it really well on the commentary all night. It was the tempo London needed to play. Last time they played Leicester in London, it was 98-96. Or 99-96, and it should have been, you know, even those 2 points London threw away at the end. So it was in the 90s, and that was London's best chance, you know. And they came out and started, and with Kajini shooting the basketball the way he was, Leicester a little bit loose defensively, but London in a bit of rhythm, moving the ball, and London doing a decent job on Crandall. Now, Whelan got going early, which I don't think Whelan, up until the third quarter, I don't think Whelan missed a shot in the copper box all season because in the cup game, I think he was like 7 of 8 or something ridiculous from the 3-point line. And congratulations to him, by the way, on getting in the GB squad. I don't know if you'll be in the 12, but I think he's got a really good shout at it because he fits them like an absolute glove, the way that he's shooting the ball and the way that he's playing, and it's just his demeanor and the way he carries himself on the court, really impressive. So he kept them going, and then they also eventually kind of got more Walker going, and then they got the Crandall Nelson Henry link up going. So whilst Crandall wasn't scoring, London weren't taking. You know, the biggest thing with defending Leicester, I've said time and time again, is you have to defend not just Crandall, but you have to defend Crandall in the big, and you have to be able to do that without giving up wide open shots to the other three. Right. But the first thing you have to do is you have to defend them in the big, because if Nelson Henry and Walker, if they catch the ball within 6 feet, are incredibly efficient scorers, and you're picking the basketball out of the basket, you can't run, you can't get out, you can't pick the tempo up. Leicester are comfortable because Leicester know that at any point in the game, they've got that. They've got a layup. And you've got to take, and that's what Bristol took away in the trophy game. You got to take that away first, then you got to rotate out the shooters and do what you can. And London didn't do that in the first half, or certainly in the second quarter when Leicester came back in the game. Which I think, what, 47-46 half time, something like
48-46 at halftime. London at that point were 9 of 18 from 3-point range. There was not a lot in the third quarter. I want to spin it through to the end of the third quarter if we can.
That's right.
There was a 3-point lead with a minute to go. London. Crandall then, I think it was 2 free throws, made it 63-62. And then there's a Spencer foul with 0.9 seconds left in the quarter. He's got his arms up. His feet are inside the no charge circle, so it can only be a defensive foul. It couldn't be an offense foul. I don't think he was quite square on, which is probably what the referees called it for. But to me, it wouldn't be the end of the world if that was a no call. But then James Veer, very upset by it, gets called for a technical. So with 0.9 seconds to go, Leicester get 3 free throws. They make all of them. And then I didn't see it in real time. I had to go back this morning to see if I could work out what the heck happened. It looked to me like Youngblood was saying something to Gino after the quarter had finished, and Gino was walking back from the free throw line and Youngblood was walking onto the court. and the referee saw whatever he said or heard whatever he said and got another technical. So Leicester then got another free throw to start the fourth quarter. So basically they got 4 points in 0.9 seconds and went from 2 down to 3 up. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. From 1 down to 3 up.
And it did, and also on top of that they cracked London, which we'll get to in a minute. A couple of things. Firstly, again, Crandall sat down from memory, and I hope I'm not conflating games here. Towards the end of the third quarter,
He did, yeah.
And London again matched them with the weird lineups. And the thing is, London have about 7 guys that can play in that game and can maintain the tempo that they need to maintain, right, to win the game. Because London cannot get involved in a dogfight with Leicester. You're just not ever going to win. And by, Spencer's minutes in this game hurt London. I don't blame Spencer per se, because Spencer's not played. And to put him in this game at that time, when he's playing without any offensive confidence, Leicester ducking as far under any screen as you can imagine when he was on the court. That hurt London's rhythm. Now you say, well, that's the only point guard they've got. Okay. Outside of Reece needs to rest. Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean if he's not one of your 7, he's not one of your 7. You find a way. And he hasn't been one of the 7 all season. And now you're asking him to be in that game when things are getting tight. And you need to score 85 or 90 points to win. Right? And you then add Tawia into it as well, who hasn't played much. He ended up sharing minutes with Kelly in this game. He played more minutes than Kelly, 20-19. And that's not foul trouble, which absolutely flabbergasted me. Because Tawia can play, he can be energetic, he can give you something. But Kelly's vertical spacing makes that team work. If you don't have the threat of Kelly throwing that lob, you are 10 times easier to guard.
And changing shots by just being there.
Changing shots defensively and offensively. I'm less kind of interested in the defense because London need to score.
Yeah.
London need to score 90, right? Which means that Reece needs to be comfortable and he needs to have his partner in crime out there throwing lobs to him. Or with the threat of throwing lobs to him. And I guarantee you, Leicester will be absolutely delighted with that decision. Not because Tawia can't play, but because Tawia fits into what Leicester can defend. Right? So there's that. And then I can't remember what Waterbuck did in the first half or the second half, but even so, that was weird to me as well. Came and played 3 minutes. If he's not ready for the fourth quarter in the Saratov game, he's not ready for that game. So anyway, the technicals happened, and London cracked. They just cracked. And it's something, I've used the phrase before, it doesn't happen very often. It happened once to them in Newcastle, but it happened a different way in Newcastle, where it was basically Reece who cracked and the rest of the team was just spinning. In this game, everybody cracked. The bench cracked. Youngblood getting that technical, if it was Youngblood, ridiculous. Can't happen. Okay? Via doesn't know what's happening when Youngblood's getting that technical, because he's looking around saying, what's all that about? Okay? So that's a discipline thing in relation to that. You look at that, there's a great shot of Paternostro on the other side, just nodding, just stood there, calm as you like, whilst this is going on, because he knows, because once the internal frisson is present in the opposition, you don't have to do anything else. You just keep going.
Yeah.
You play your way, you do what you can. You just keep turning the pressure up. And then, and Vince pointed it out as well, Williams sits out the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And we're getting, this is happening regularly. Armstrong in the cup final.
Yeah.
Sat out the fourth quarter. Sat out the first minutes of the fourth quarter, and 2 minutes becomes 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And 4 points becomes 12 points. And that's the game.
Yeah.
And the game is on the line. And in the BBL, you don't have enough guys of the same level on your bench, even London in this game, to be taking away and taking out a rhythm. One of your main guys, Dirk Williams, doesn't get tired and playing the BBL. I'm sorry, he can play. Dirk Williams could play for 50 minutes in a game like that because it's all adrenaline. It's adrenaline fueled.
Yeah.
And there's a difference in coaching the game and putting your team in by the book as to who needs to do what. He's going to give us this and he's going to give it that, as opposed to the realistic situation as to actually this guy's not played for 3 months.
Yeah.
Why I can't, in this game, every Leicester guy is feeling great about themselves. They're all playing, they're all in rhythm, whatever. They all know what their rules are. You can't figure it out on the fly against Leicester when you need to score. And that's what happened. Reece got tired, which brings me back to the 30-odd minutes he played against Saratov.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Kelly wasn't playing is the biggest thing, because Kelly playing 19 minutes is just it's the phrase they use in the NBA is vertical spacing. He makes the opposition big retreat. He makes him worried about the lob at all times. It's the basis of everything London have done all season, and you only played 19 minutes, and I didn't get that. And what happened then was you just saw Leicester were just the wrench, and they just tightened the nut, tightened the nut, and every offense, London became a little bit more desperate, a little bit less considered in their decision making. There's still shots they could make, but those shots are tougher when you know the game is getting away from you and you're out of rhythm. And they cracked.
Yeah, they did.
Fundamentally, they cracked.
So basically,
offensively, yeah.
Neither team scored for the first 3 minutes, but then Adekoya 3, Loving shot, Whelan on a layup, and London were just missing everything. And the reason I mentioned the score with a minute to go in the third quarter is because it was 63-60. The next 18 points were scored by Leicester, 63-78. London didn't score for 9.5 minutes, and we were getting to the point where we were going, they might get a 0 in this quarter, because it was it's one of those things that you pick up on after like 3 or 4 minutes. You sort of go, they've not scored for 4 minutes here, and then it was like, oh, they've not scored for 5 minutes, or they've not scored for 6 minutes, or they've not scored for 7. And honestly, thought they might not score. The interesting thing, the 2 scores that they did get in the fourth quarter, because they scored 4 points, were both at the basket. One of them was a turnover in transition.
Yeah, so I immediately looked at Rob's face after that.
Yeah,
he wasn't happy because he saw the shutout. He was pitching the shutout as well.
He was with the baseball.
Yeah, all that baseball references I heard during that. Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know what he might have thought he was a decent shortstop, but I don't imagine he caught the fly balls going over his head. Anyway,
I actually did. He was apparently from what I've read, a pretty good baseball player.
I'm sure was when everybody was little. I'm sure he was the best. But they grew. Anyway, I don't know enough about baseball. Start talking about that. I'm certainly not doing a podcast about it. No, the interesting thing about what you say is, those first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter, Leicester are happy. That's the thing that separates Leicester from everybody else, is that Leicester can win with offense and Leicester can win with defense. It doesn't need to be one or the other. It needs to be working. Their offense is exceptional, but you can shut them down. You can. You've got to be very diligent. You got to get into the right players. And it's really a hard job. You've got to be really on point. Their defense relies on being pesky, being on point in relation to the scouting, having good size, shrinking the court, but most importantly, having guys with a high IQ. There's no, probably Crandall aside, when he's extending his defense, and he can't do it the whole game because of the minutes he's playing. And Connor aside, there are probably no what you'd describe as great defenders in the Leicester team. Nobody who stands out. But the fact that none of them stand out is actually a testament to how good they are.
Yeah.
Because they're getting to the spots. So they know the shots that they're giving up. And in the first half, they weren't on it because Cagini doesn't shoot that many threes if they're locked in. Right?
Yeah,
and he did in the second half.
Rob talked about it before the game, the three-point shot. And then they obviously didn't do a very good job of that.
But players don't believe it until they see it happening in front of them.
Halftime, they just took it away. So they
did, but London took themselves out of it as well, because those shots don't drop when you're not comfortable. And Reece started shooting them, and as I say, Williams wasn't on the court, and London didn't get into transition, and that 4 minute 0-0 death spiral was the game.
It
was the game.
Let me just give the numbers on it. It was 34-19 in the second half, having been 48-46 at halftime. 14-4 in the fourth quarter. Lions were 2 of 14 from the floor in the fourth quarter. They missed their first 11 shots of the fourth quarter. And the 3-point thing, I said they were 9 of 18 at halftime. They were 1 for 11 in the second half. So 7 fewer attempts, and obviously they couldn't buy one.
What's interesting about that, Dan, is right. You say they missed the first 11 shots in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the number.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they scored the first point with about 2 minutes on the clock, yeah?
I think
So
it was less than that. It was about
maybe
1:30.
Well, so they shot 11 shots in 8 minutes. That's Leicester's tempo.
Yeah.
You know, it's Leicester's tempo. They're not getting in transition. They're not getting offensive rebounds. You know, they're not getting good stuff up. They can't win. They can't. I don't see any team. Bristol kind of did it, but I don't see any team beating Leicester at that tempo, because I think Leicester are too certain of themselves in relation to the decisions that they make, and too comfortable that they're going to get a good shot and they're going to start knocking them down at the end. You have to, you have to get up and down against them, and London did for a half, but they didn't have the capability, the players, the decision making to do it for the whole game, and that's why they ran out of gas, and that's why Leicester are 11-0. And to be blunt, it's the same as when they played Cheshire. The Cheshire Leicester game, very similar.
Yeah,
very similar. They come out, they take the team's best punch, but you can't get in. You can't keep going up and down if you're giving layups. Eventually they're going to grind you down.
Dirk Williams with 16 points. Cagini was 5 of 8 from 3 for 15. Washburn 12 and 13. Whelan had 17 points. Mo Walker 16 and 12 rebounds, 6 offensive. Crandall 12, 8 and 7.
And the Walker number, Walker's coming off the bench, right? Kelly's coming off the bench, playing 19 minutes. He has 5 points, 5 rebounds.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they can't win. He can't win with Kelly. Kelly's a guy with 22 and 14 in Saratov. You can't win if he plays 19 minutes. That's 5 points and 5 rebounds. Not against that team. And I don't put that on Kelly.
No.
It's just bizarre.
So let's go to the final game of the Friday night in the trophy, where Glasgow were at Thames Valley. Ali Fraser was back. I'm assuming it was a terrible game and it was a blowout because nobody saw it. It didn't exist.
It didn't exist. I have to say, I was really disappointed that the only decent overtime game of was one that we didn't get to see.
We didn't get to see. No, Thames Valley. Thames Valley 91, Glasgow 97 in overtime. But unfortunately, they didn't stream it, so we couldn't watch it.
No, so I'm not going to talk. I haven't talked yet about something I didn't watch, so I don't really think we should do it on this. Only to say that on the stats, Glasgow's minutes distribution was interesting. They seem to be playing equal opportunities and giving everybody a shot, which I'm not sure is the best way forward when you're dealing with a quarterfinal against a team who's desperate for an upset. That said, it might have been because the starters weren't doing it, so you have to put the bench in. I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Jordan Johnson's numbers were really down, which surprised me.
They were. Yeah, Rocks did lead for much of the game. There was a free throw. We don't know how long to go. It said 48 seconds, although given what happened after that in the play-by-play, I doubt it was 48 seconds to go. It went to overtime. Rocks had a 9-0 run. Hakim Silla had 20 points, 12 of 18 shooting.
30 points.
Sorry, 30 points. I've written down 20. It definitely was. You can't have 12 of 18 shooting and
bit harsh if you have.
30 points. Jacoby Bonner, 27 and 9. Fraser had 21 and 7 off the bench. Hillsman, 19. They had 55 points off the bench, to your point about equal opportunities. Let's go to a game that we were able to watch on Saturday. Surrey Scorchers, 74. Manchester Giants, 81. Scorchers started this game well, but then Jules Dangakodo, he was scoring, but then he got injured and he went off and he never came back. Teo, who by the looks of it was on a minutes restriction, so he wanted to make the most of the minutes in the meantime. Yeah, he came in and he was making those shots as well, and Scorchers got out to a double-figure lead early on. And Dan Clark as well. Dan Clark played 6 minutes. I didn't notice him go off other than a substitution. He never came off. Never came back.
I think Jameson was missing as well for Surrey.
He was, yeah.
And Raftopoulos as well.
Yeah.
I have two sides to this game. Manchester, I was watching the first quarter with Manchester and was kind of getting a bit perplexed. I was trying to figure out what was going on because Dan Clark played 6 minutes, but he hardly looked at the basket. And I kind of figured, I think I figured it out, and I hope I'm right, but as ever, we could always be wrong because I'm not in the locker room, I don't know. But it seemed to me that they were making a conscious effort to run their stuff. And what I mean by their stuff is they were running their sets all the way through to the ball. So Dan Clark would catch the ball at the top and he'd go immediately into a dribble handoff, even though no one was guarding him.
Yeah.
And he could stand there and, stood there and shoot
it was a bit collegiate, wasn't it? It was a bit like college basketball where that's what you've got to do until the coach says you can have that shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of, my mind was like, what's going on? Why are they, Armstrong, they're running everything. Armstrong was throwing the ball in the horn, setting the ball, everybody's rotating around. And they couldn't score. I mean, they had 5 points in the first 7 minutes. And I was thinking to myself, well, I know you've got a big game tomorrow, and I know your offense hasn't been working the way that you want it to be working, but you've got to be very, very careful about taking any game into BBL as a practice session. That was actually going through my mind in the first quarter as it was happening. That said, as I say, the whole Dan Clark thing slightly weird because he didn't come back on the court, didn't look noticeably injured. Obviously, they got a game the next night, but that game was in jeopardy for 35 minutes, basically.
Yeah. He must have had something. It must have been an injury. I was actually, given that, I was surprised to see him play today and start today. I was
even then he played limited minutes today.
And he didn't look to be moving quite as freely. So there must be an injury there that we're not aware of.
I just kind of couldn't figure out why he wouldn't do a tail and get his shots up because he was quite open. And so that impacted them at the beginning. But Surrey, as we know, Surrey struggled to sustain any form of good play for about more than a quarter. And it's probably even harder for them now with the limitations on their bench, and particularly Dan Akodo, who actually may be their most important player. If you actually look at their team as a whole, not the best player, not the most productive player, but he may be the most important player because he takes the ball out of Davis's hand. He means that they can use Avtodor as a spot-up shooter and Davis as a scorer, and can add just a little bit of organisation to what they're doing. But yeah, Taylor got a shot. So Taylor didn't look right to me, I'll be honest. I didn't think Manchester bothered to make him do things that. I think there was a time probably in the fourth quarter, he got a shot blocked by somebody who couldn't get off the ground. I can't remember. But he didn't look right to me. But he got it out and he played and he got the ball where he wanted it, and we shot the ball and he made them, which is good for him. But in the second quarter, their momentum dissipated.
Yeah,
Manchester gradually dragged themselves back in, and the guy who did it was Artisan. Artisan, and he is, to be absolutely fair, he is probably the brightest of the sparks of McKnight going, and they lose players, and they change the roles, but within everything, he's actually demonstrated a game that he probably didn't demonstrate in November and December. The problem is that it's not been quite enough. Because of the fact that everybody else has been kind of projected up through the ranks a little bit. But no, he made a pull-up jump shot. He got to the rim. He made a three. He just made plays.
He had 10 points in a 14-0 run, which took them from 9 down to 5 up.
And you like that because he had a little bit of will. And there was a little bit of will to it. It wasn't just kind of running up and down and making a shot. Oh, look at me, I'm great. It was quite structured, and it was quite what's the best way? Decisive in the way that he did it. There were no bad shots. There were no lucky shots. He went through his whole repertoire, to the basket, to the pull-up, pop for the three, knock them all down, play defense at the same time. And kind of once they got their noses in front, despite the fact that they were playing minutes, considerable minutes without Armstrong and Clark at times, they never really, never really again, when they get behind, they never really ever look like making that, sustaining a run to get back into a game.
Whelan had 7 in a row to start a 17-2 run in the third quarter, and that was basically it. The one thing you did know was that at the end, Surrey would make some shots and Manchester would just ease off a little bit, and it would get back to 7, but it was never going to get any closer than that.
They're a dangerous spread team, so you never know. The other thing that got me with Surrey was, it was again one of those times where you think, oh, maybe there's a run in them, and Will Saunders is left wide open, twice, and I'm like, come on, guys, you've got to guard him. He's a big red underline, asterisk on the scouting report, double print, chase him off, make him work. no comfortable catch and shoot.
Yeah.
And he got comfortable catch and shoots off no particular action. It wasn't like they'd switched, they'd thrown the ball 3 times around and everybody had been scrapping for each other. So, at that point, you think, you can't give the opposition's best player or the best opposition scorer as their favourite looks, and they do it time and time again. That said, they're down on bodies, so it is tough. Thomas is new and is struggling a little bit. And, they do play hard. Sorry, most of the time. They don't generally play smart when they're playing hard. And there are times where, obviously, we saw in the Derby game when they're coming off the win where they didn't play hard. So to back on, and they get into that tipping point in the season now whereby it doesn't get any better. They need a full squad. They need everybody out there. But it may well be that it just becomes too late because everybody becomes so demoralised. By the next probably tipping point's probably in about 3 weeks' time. If something doesn't turn around before then they're playing Newcastle on Friday night, which is a big game for them because Newcastle are down on bodies as well, so there's no excuses, in relation to if you want to beat a team that you want to get in the playoffs, you've got to beat the team that's 7th. So we'll see. Manchester, they needed the win. As I say, I was a little bit afraid for them at the beginning of the game. But then, it's been over a month since McKnight's gone and they haven't got anybody in.
No.
Or they've certainly not announced anybody in. And there's been, rumours of people and all sorts of stuff, but there's no bodies there and they need a body. At this point, because Whelan and Steele are giving them good minutes and all of that stuff, but they're not talking about competing for 5th. They're talking about competing for the top 3. And they're a scorer short for competing for the top 3, and that's why Armstrong's had to take on so much. And obviously, if Clark gets hurt, then again, if Clark struggles, then they're really they're down what they need to be in the top 3.
So Teo was 6 of 8 shooting in 23 minutes. So my guess with his minutes restriction was probably 20. 19 points he had. Davis 13, 10 and 5 and 5 turnovers. 5 of 15 shooting. Hamrick 10 off 13 shots. Not that productive. And I seem not to have written down any giant scorers. I'm going to guess that Artisan was the top scorer.
Artisan had 19 and 10 in this game. I think that was the stat I saw. I think the rest of it was done by committee, basically. Whelan and Saunders and and Lewis and those guys. I don't know what Armstrong had, but he was playing within himself from what I could see.
So let's go to Sunday and Surrey's second game of back-to-back. Plymouth City Patriots 87, Surrey Scorchers 74. No Kofi Josephs, no Raul Graham Bell for the Patriots, no Danga Kodo and Robertin for the Scorchers. And oh yes, sorry, yes. And, on top of the guys who were missing yesterday.
This game was so significant in my mind, just so you know, I didn't realise it was on until after half time.
Oh right, so you missed the excitement.
I missed the Joe Hart explosion.
Joe Hart shooting well.
Joe Hart going off.
You missed Stanley going off as well in the first quarter.
Stanley had 20 in the first half as well. Yeah,
he had 16. Stanley Davis had 16 points in the first quarter. 4 of 4 shooting, 3 of 3 from the 3-point line, 5 of 6 from the free throw line, a 3 on the buzzer. He was doing everything.
I saw the 3 on the buzzer. That was what got my attention. That there was a good game on, because I saw the clip on Twitter, and I was like, oh Jesus, that's 3 o'clock. Oh, no, better turn it on. So no, I totally blew that one, I'm afraid. So I blew the scouting report on this game.
So let's spin it forward to the second half then.
Yeah, I watched a bit of that.
Joe Hart, first of all, had 10 points in a 16-0 run, which turned them from 6 down to 10 up. To be fair, Surrey got it back just before half time, but then after the break, Hassan and Williams paced a 12-3 run, and they went back out to double figures, Plymouth.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that is. I mean, the rule of thumb in the BBL is generally for a big proper BBL team, 1 injury makes you better. 2 injuries you can survive about a fortnight. 3 injuries you're pretty much in trouble, and 4 injuries you're absolutely screwed. And Surrey's at the 4 injuries point. So they got 2 young lads playing their academy. They got Teo playing on a hard floor, second game in 2 nights, half fit. And I thought they put up a decent show from what I could see. Plymouth are down a couple of players as well, but Plymouth have, at that point, they've got Williams and Hassan.
Yeah.
Right. Williams and Hassan, who are a perfectly competent and capable BBL scoring combination, certainly in the lower half of the league and potentially higher than that. When you throw in the pieces that they've got around them, Dusha, Joe, and Joe shooting like that, Denzel's and his athleticism, and we've got a couple of big bodies as well with Adi Kunle, and obviously Bell wasn't playing, but even so, they've got athleticism and bodies. It's a 2 injuries, the 4 injuries. 2 injuries you can manage for a couple of weeks, 4 injuries you're stuffed, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. So yeah, I watched up until the third quarter, the end of the third quarter. As I say, I thought Surrey were competing, they were making plays, doing what they could, but they were never. It was one of those games whereby at halftime you see it's a 4-point game, and you immediately look at the spread and think, "Oh, this is nice," because this ain't gonna last. You immediately think, well, because Plymouth, even without, as I say, without Josephs and without Bell, they're a perfectly competent BBL team. And
they got it back to 7, sorry, but then a 14-2 run took it out to 86-67.
And for all I kind of get on Davis, Davis is still a gamer. Davis still goes and plays. He plays hard. He can score the ball. He's athletic. He can, he get to the rim. He has a little bit. He has something about him. He's by no means not a guy who can succeed in the BBL. Who can play. He can, and
he's not a point guard.
He just needs to be in the right. I don't think he's a point guard. That's just no. He might be
20 points, 7 assists, 8 turnovers. That's
that's the thing. Basically, he's a playmaker.
And
that's not a playmaker in your old school John Stockton, Steve Nash playmaker. That's a playmaker as a guy who makes plays. But making plays means that you are at risk of making plays which are also negative for your team. But you're right, 7 assists, 8 turnovers, that's you can't win that way.
There was something going on in the telly during this game, and the one bright spark of that thing that was going on in the telly happened just at the moment near the end where Jules Dangakoda got ejected. So I didn't see why he was on court or what had happened, but I looked back down actually at my laptop, and he'd obviously, I assumed there was some sort of
I was at the point of putting the sprouts in the pan.
Okay. I assume there was some sort of coming together, and he'd obviously come onto court, and anybody who leaves the bench, coming together is ejected. So I'm assuming that's what happened. But as I say, it was one of them where I looked up and I saw somebody who was not in thing. I was thinking, what's he doing?
All I say about that is, Plymouth, you're 3-9. Bristol, sorry, you're 1-9. Neither of you've got anything to be talking about.
No.
So I don't know if that was total whatever, but ultimately just get some wins and then start talking.
Yeah. So Joe Hart had 9 of 11 shooting, 5 of 6 for 3 for 25 points, 7 and 4 as well. Hassan with 16, Williams with 15 and 9 assists. Davis, I've given his numbers already. Hamrick 16 and Thomas had 15 and 10. So let's go. Oh, I've almost thrown my piece of paper away without going to Manchester against London there. Let's go to the trophy game, which was the Manchester Giants 79, the London Lions 90. The same players that were missing. London came out, Dirk Williams, Kajini, Reese, early threes. They're 15-3 out after 3.5 minutes and seemingly cruising.
Yeah, I kind of feared for London in this game after the comments that James made after the game on Friday night, where on Sky, and he was saying, this is a process and learn the guys, and I've got to, we haven't had that many practices and all this stuff, because I was thinking, when we've got a peak at the end of the season and all that stuff, and I'm thinking, no, you really need to be peaking now because this team's been together for 6 months, and you don't want the players to be kind of buying into that narrative of, but we're just a work in progress, and we're going, because by that point, if you don't look after the present, then the future isn't going to be there, you know. And so I was fearful, a little bit fearful for that, but Kelly was back in the starting lineup, and they went back to a far more kind of the way that they'd been playing basketball for the first 3 or 4 months of the season, where basically they've been pretty darn good. You know, and they haven't lost that many games. They lost a silly game at Surrey when they had 6 players, and, you know, New Year's Day, and, you know, for whatever reason, certain players weren't there or weren't allowed to play. They lost a silly game in Newcastle where they were just they didn't know what the BBL had in for them, and they underestimated Fletcher in particular. But apart from that, in the BBL terms, the 2 relatively close games against Leicester in the Cup semi-finals, where they couldn't quite get over the hump. But apart from that, they've been, you know, they've been pretty good, and they are kind of what they are, you know. And I thought the lineups in this game were far more cohesive for London. I don't know how many minutes Kelly played, but it was certainly a lot more than he did on Friday night. And yeah, they got off by starting off doing what they do. They spread the floor, and they're virtually impossible to guard. When you have those shooters, it's not virtually impossible. They're very difficult to guard when you have those shooters and you have Kelly in the middle. You've got to decide what you got to pick your poison, decide what you're going to give up. And Manchester again started very slowly offensively, and the reality is their shot creation outside of, with their starting lineup, that their shot creation is really relying on Armstrong and Clark. And if Clark's not right, then Armstrong is letting, as most point guards do, is going to try and get everybody else going first. They're going to struggle from the get-go, you know, to get shots, to get good looks, because Artisan's not a natural scorer. Steele's a guy who's going to score the ball off Armstrong's penetration, or off kick outs and that type of thing. And Jamel's not a guy who you're going to go to and say, put the ball in the basket for us early on. And they got bit by that. And unfortunately, that first 5 minutes of the game was the game.
Yeah.
Because once those shooters get comfortable, once they get knocking them down, once they're in rhythm, it's it's a long way back. And again, it happened in Newcastle 3 weeks ago, where they had like 36 points at the end of the first, 34 points at the end of the first quarter. You know, if you're not locked in on this team straight away, and as I say, this is why starting to wire just absolutely baffled me on Friday, because that lineup, you know, Kelly, Reese, Dirk Williams, Cugini, Washburn, and Kelly, with the opportunity to throw Will Neighbour in there as well. That is
a tough cover.
It's a tough cover. It's as tough a cover as it's been in this league in a long time. I'll say that, as there's been in this league in a long time, just offensively. Now, everything that goes on the other end, whether they run back, whether they get upset with each other, whether they don't share the ball, whether they crack, whatever. But the only way that you're going to beat London, and I still think this, even now, even though they've lost 5 or 6 games now, is if you can crack them. If you can take that away from them, if you can make their you can get into their heads and impact their decision making, and you're not going to do that whilst Lorenzo and Dirk are knocking down shots, and then Washburn knocking down shots, and Kelly, you know, dunking the ball, Reece being comfortable. So yeah, Manchester, very kind of met kind of game. 25 points at half time. Just, you know, it made you think, Christ, how good was Saratov?
Yeah.
I was watching this game. What did that Saratov team do at London? And what's London doing to Manchester? You know?
So they were 10 of 20 from 3-point range in the first half, the Lions. They were up by as many as 27 in the third quarter, and the game looked done and dusted, to be honest with you. But they were a bit sloppy down the stretch, and Giants did get it back to 8 points. It never quite looked like they were going to get all the way back, but
no, it didn't. They made a couple of bad plays down the stretch. I mean, obviously, again, Dan Clark's minutes were significantly restricted in this game, and that has a massive impact because they're not deep enough to take that out and to be on the par of the very top teams. The Steele turned the ball over in transition when they were down 8 with about 2 minutes to go, which was kind of a momentum killer. Then they gave up an offensive rebound, and Dirk just shot a foul shot from 30 feet. And bang, 11-point game. And as Jason said, on to that's the dagger. But they were comfortable, even, London knew they were winning that game. Armstrong got going a little bit. Whelan got going a little bit. Jamal
They just had there was like a couple of shot clock violations and some. You allow the crowd to get up and weird things.
You do. It's just
it
I
didn't
just
look
think
like
that it's one thing having those when you're up 6. Another thing when you're up 13. When you've got the amount of talent they've got, and they are playing, to be fair, pretty significant minutes. Some of those guys.
Third game in since
third game in 5 days, and so there's kind of the temptation to kind of just hold the ball a bit longer. Run to make the game a bit shorter. That does come in, but that kills your offensive rhythm. But I'm pretty sure that the coaches don't think like this, but I'm pretty sure the players who were in charge of the game thought that there's no way in the world that we're going to lose this game at this point.
Armstrong,
though.
Good
crowd, nice to see.
Yeah, it was. To be fair, there's all weekend been good crowds. Every game we saw. Armstrong 20 points and 8 assists. Lewis 18, Steele 11. Dirk Williams 6 of 9 from 3 for 28 points. Reese had 4 of 8 for 20 points. He also had 9 assists and 5 steals. The field goal shooting was very similar between the two teams. The big difference was Lions were 14 of 31 from 3 and Giants were 8 of 18.
14 through 31 threes. You can't defend that 3-point. Rob said it, on Friday night, we got to defend 3-point line. It's just, you'll give up the lobs to Kelly. It's slightly different to Leicester. With Leicester, you can't give up the stuff to Nelson Henry and Walker inside. Because it's something that they know they can always go back to. With London, if Kelly gets a few lobs a game, you kind of have to live with it because you're not giving up Coutinho and threes in the corner. Because you have to kind of work on the basis that some of the time we're going to get a body on Kelly, we're going to try and take that middle penetration away. Not all the time, but it's a tough play to make time and time again. Not a tough play for Crandall to throw the ball to Nelson Henry.
No.
It's an 8-4 easy, and it's still 2 points. Now, neither Nelson Henry or Walker is getting anywhere near above the rim, but they don't need to. It's still 2 points, and so there's kind of a technical difference in how you have to defend the two teams and what you have to focus on, and what you have to stop to do it. With London, primarily it's a 3-point shooters. With Leicester, primarily it's the inside guys and Gino at the rim, and then you work on the rest. I'm not sure how much teams at this part of the season, it's pretty tough to kind of change this up game in game. Manchester had a game the night before. But teams should know each other by now as well. So there should be at least everybody should have an idea. This is what we need to do to stop teams. And I'm not sure at times, having watched some of these games this year, that there's enough focus being placed on specifics of the.
It's pretty obvious with London as well because the numbers are so stark in terms of the numbers of threes.
It is. I mean, it's obvious. It's an easy thing to do. It's an easy thing to do, to say, not such an easy thing to do. I mean, I'm mindful of, Theo stood in that corner in Plymouth, and that kind of one of the 10 minutes of that game I got to watch, where the ball goes out to him. And despite the fact it's Theo, despite the fact he has about 5,000 BBR points, about 3,500 of them are from corner threes. Right? That's an exaggeration, but not as much as you would think. Right? There's still a soft closeout from the Plymouth guy. And it's a soft little closeout. And Theo is just going to rise up and shoot that. And you're thinking, get up to him. He's hurt. Make him dribble to his left. Dribble into the help. The worst thing that happens is he makes a tough 2 instead of a 3 that he's made for the entirety of his career. And I'm watching it thinking, that's not good defense.
Let's go forward on games rather than back here. So let's go forward to the final game of the weekend. Cheshire Phoenix 93, Glasgow Rocks 87. No Mockford for Cheshire or Austin. And that's quite a significant hole for them. And they got down early on. Johnson had 9 in 11-2 run, and the Rocks had 25 points inside 7 minutes, and looked pretty good despite going to overtime on Friday night.
Yeah, well, Rocks went kind of full Jekyll and Hyde. 32 points in the first quarter, 10 in the second quarter. The start of this game, and we've talked about plus minuses before, as being a bit risky, but the start of this game is that Gareth Murray was a plus 11 on the plus minus in his 35 minutes, which means that in the 5 minutes he didn't play, they lost by 17. Right, that's a bit of a scary stat, a scary number. Now, there's other things that might have gone on in the 5 minutes that he didn't play, so it might not just be that. But the beginning of the second quarter, and they had no Fraser, which hurts them. I mean, Glasgow with Ali Fraser can beat anybody. Glasgow without Ali Fraser are fighting an uphill battle. They got beginning of the second quarter. They had new guy Johnson on, who really didn't really impact the game at all. Like one shot, no point, 18 minutes. Bunyan really struggled, and he was 1 of 10 on Friday night. So I don't know if he's hurt or whatever. With Harris on the bench and Gareth on the bench, they just basically offensively imploded. And I thought the game was kind of summarized by the last play of the first half. Glasgow runner, and Glasgow got a ball 12 seconds left. Johnson penetrates, throws it to Bunyan. Cheshire do a good job in the corner, force him off the 3-point line, takes a step inside 3-point line, shoots a decent shot, rims out, because Johnson's on the baseline, Bunyan's on the baseline. There's nobody in the backcourt to throw it out there, and I think Naaman Wright or somebody, or Kyle Carey,
was right,
dunked it with 2 seconds to go. And you're thinking, God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
That's horrible. The very least, you got a chance of going in up, at the very least tied, or if you don't score, down 2. Instead, you're going down 4 with the opposition having the momentum, which they tried to give away by getting a technical at half time. But even so, that kind of that little detail stuff.
Well, the interesting thing is,
you
talk about that. It was 40-42 at that point, and then at the couple of minutes into the second half, they're still on 42, and Cheshire have scored 15 points in a row and lead 55-42 with Carey and Wright hitting threes as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, Carey was great in this game because he's playing more minutes, and it's interesting. It totally changes the look of their team when they've got Teddy and Ben Mockford and Larry Austin sharing minutes. Instead, Teddy's playing 40 minutes, and in the backcourt, you've got Naaman Wright and Kyle Carey. And you think, are they going to get enough offense out of Kyle Carey outside the transition stuff? And they did. He played great in this game. He made shots when he had to. It seems to be a guy who rises to kind of more responsibility, which is really good for his development. They also, in that second quarter, they got some great minutes out of Robbie Graham as well, who was +8 in about 6 minutes. Doesn't play much, but every time he plays, he looks like he belongs. A bit little, but he made the 3. He made a corner 3, and then got back in transition and knocked the ball away from one of the Rocks guys for what would have been an easy layup in transition. So he's kind of out there making plays, and that was really positive for Cheshire as well. But this run was, Bradley got going. They made some shots. Teddy Carey got going, and as you say, Glasgow looked like they were finished. But what Gareth then did was he went to a zone, and that zone brought them back in the game slowly, gradually, because that Cheshire team, particularly with they've got, without Mockford, they're zonable, because Wright kind of takes a bit of time to lock into his 3. He kind of rises up and does it. Bradley the same. Bradley can shoot the 3, particularly when he's wide open, but he does that kind of lock in and line it. It's a bit of a
wind up, isn't it?
It's a bit of a wind up on the shot, and Carey can shoot it, but he is not a guy you're scared of kind of making 5 or 6 in a quarter. So the zone slowed them down, and the other thing was that Jordan Harris got going, and Jordan Harris is, I think, the best one-man fast break in this league. Probably for a couple of years. Because he gets a defensive rebound, it's a layup. And it doesn't matter who's in front of him or whatever. He's just north south, and he's playing really, really impressively as the season goes on, aggressively, athletically, and they kind of dragged it back off transition, off the zone a little bit.
The other
And then
thing was,
Hillsman got going.
yeah, the other thing is into the fourth quarter, Knicks were still reasonably comfortable, but then they just kept missing free throws. They missed a ton of free throws in the fourth quarter, Cheshire. Hillsman, as you say, was making threes at the other end, and they were just reeling them in. And it was almost like, is there going to be enough time for them to get all the way back?
Yeah, and I thought, you see, this is a tough. It's always the toughest one as a coach, this, because the zone's got you all the way back, but you stick with it to the very end, you know, because at the end of the day, eventually against the zone, they're going to figure out, they're going to get a shot now. Whether they're comfortable enough and confident enough to knock it down is another question, because of what they've been in. But do you want to rely on them missing at that point? Or do you want to change it up again? I did think to myself, about 2.5 minutes to go in the game, it was a 2-point game. It was the possession before Kyle Carey made it that 3. I did think to myself, you know, I think about coming out of this zone at this point, just to give them another look, just to change it, because they're getting, whilst they hadn't been making shots, they were comfortable, and you don't want to stand there and hope somebody misses to win you the game. You know, you want to be a bit more directional than that.
So
and what that was, Carey made the 3, didn't he?
Carey's 3, that was in the corner with 1:45 to go, 86-82. Johnson then got into the paint at the other end. He missed, so came back down, and Carey got a very similar shot. This time, and you think, well, if that goes in, that's game over. It doesn't go in. Harris on the fast break scores. It's 86-84.
Harris fast break.
It's just under a minute to go.
And they're still in the zone. And Bradley.
Still in the zone. And Bradley then hits a 3 to make it 89-84. But Harris replied immediately, 89-87. Then Gareth fouls out on, well, I'm not sure what that foul was, but he must have known what was coming. He must have gone, well, I'll foul Teddy and they'll miss both from the free throw line.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2 things really. I thought they lost the game on the 2 threes they gave up. Particularly the Bradley one. I mean, after he, you know, that was a lineup shot. That was Levi Bradley's shot. You know, and he had made some shots in that game. You know, I thought giving up that shot, once you're down 5 with 40 odd seconds to go, then a lot has to happen. Now, one of those things was Jordan Harris making that shot, and I was kind of doubtful about trusting the clock on the screen at Ellesmere Port, but pretty clear that there's 30 seconds left when Gareth made that foul, and I'm like, you know, and the other thing is the score is looking straight up at the scoreboard, which is behind the basket. And I'm thinking it's a 2-point game. You know, you've got an 8-second differential. That is not a good foul. No. I don't care whether they're making shots or they're missing shots. That is not a good foul. It's his 5th foul. He fouls out on that. And, you know, that's, for me, you know, anything more than 28 seconds is a no foul situation. To watch. 28 seconds is about 28 seconds, because by the time the shot goes up, the rebound, the game can be over. But 32 seconds, no way. You know, you get a stop and you've got the ball, you've got 2 extremely explosive players and the chance to get a foul or whatever. And so instead they played the free throw game, which, as you say, they had a chance of actually coming out of successfully because Teddy misses 2.
Teddy misses both. Hillsman then gets fouled with 23 seconds to go and a chance to tie it, and he missed them both.
He missed them both, which is crazy.
What they actually needed was a big man to come and show these guys how to shoot free throws. So Mike Cherobia does the business. 22 seconds to go, makes 2 foul shots. 91-87, and then timeout. They advance the ball. Johnson gets in right. I don't know if he blocked it or he just changed the shot, but he certainly challenged the shot. Johnson misses, and Cherobia with the rebound. He's fouled again.
I don't think Johnson's particularly healthy because, you know, that he does not have the same bounce he had earlier on this season. Does not have the same, bounce is the word. You know, he was bouncing, people were bouncing off him, and he was making those plays earlier in the season. Second thing is, Cherobia was plus 19 in this game in 21 minutes. You know, he is an absolute critical player for him. They're not playing him and Dickerson together, which I think is, or they didn't in this game. It might be because they were down on bodies, which I think is sensible. And I think it helps everybody else. And Dickerson, was -8, Ocherobia was +19, and they're basically playing parallel minutes, you know. So that shows you just how important Ocherobia is to the Cheshire Phoenix. And he's not turning the ball over, he's rebounding the ball incredibly well at both ends, and eventually, as you say, knocking down the foul shots when the guards can't do it. So, you know, there's not been that I've seen this year an import big guy who's outplayed Ocherobia. There's times he fouls himself out.
Yeah.
A bit aggressive. But if you're just talking about actual minutes on the court in relation to what he's given his team, even the imports, you know, they're playing him even. But there's nobody who's outplaying him. You know, I remember Walker couldn't really move him. Shelton's athleticism hurt him, but then Ocherobia's both beat him up at the other end. You know, he's just a really important piece for that team, and they are very, they are a talented team. Now the big thing is, can Ben get games out of them when they've got 9 guys? And can you get them all playing the right minutes so they're all happy when they've got those 9 guys? Because that's not easy. And the reason I say they're all happy, that's important because performance is linked to comfort. So there's no point playing them. If playing a guy who plays 25 minutes might play great, he plays 8 minutes in the game, he might, you know, took up 3 bad shots, sit down and not be happy. And can you do that? Because as I say, you know, 1 injury generally always makes you better. 2 injuries, you can have 2 today. You can survive for a couple of weeks until you're risking any more. But when you get them all back, creates problems for it again.
How do you balance?
So what do you do? Yeah, that's a test for them.
Bradley had 28 points, 12 of 16 shooting. Wright had 20 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, Carey 17. Harris had 26, 4 and 5. Hillsman 22, and Johnson I think had 18. Although my pen ran out at that point, so it's a bit of a scratch.
Yeah. Can you give us a regular your regular update on the Rocks record away from home?
I can't actually. You know, I was so quick on here. I haven't actually done the league table, but I think they're 1 and something.
Right.
They obviously won.
Thames Valley doesn't count, so
Yeah.
It's 1 because we didn't see
happen.
it. So it didn't happen. So it's one more loss than last time, and that's as far as we can go.
Yeah.
They've not really. I know, you know, they didn't think Mini fitted them, but they've never replaced him.
No.
You know, 1 guy's come and gone, got injured. Second guy, you know, not really giving them much today, and he's got a couple more weeks, I suppose, to fit in because he's new to the team. But you know, that kind of extra shot blocking, long body is really being missed by them. That was a winnable game today.
It was. So that will do it for this week. Scheduling note, my son is playing an away game in Edinburgh next Sunday, and I'm on minibus driving duty. So I won't be back in time to do it. So Dave and I will have to have a chat off air in terms of when we might be able to.
You can pop in Newcastle on the way back.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There'll be a pie and peas, and or a bacon sandwich available on the roadside. No, whatever. Yeah, we'll find a way.
We'll find a way. We'll work it out. But for now, have a great week, and we'll see you at some point next week. Goodbye.